Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the veteran and first responder community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that can help us live our best life. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. I am quite honored to have with us today the amazing Stefan, and he is what you would call a holistic intelligence strategist, and he's founded a business called Shoshinry, and I'm going to say that without my beautiful accent. It's actually a Japanese name. So without further ado, Stefan, please introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. This is a really pleasant surprise because I did think this was going to be the call about planning this podcast, but we're getting straight into it. So this is great. So as described, my business Shoshinry, comes from the word Shoshin, which is a Zen Buddhist principle around beginner's mind. And it's something that was a super life-changing principle for me. I'll get into that a bit more if we get into the background about, my journey from military and intelligence into where I am now. And now, this business basically works around mostly in the corporate space. And really, the main category would be around health and wellness, but it's really about helping bring the very best out of a business through its teams and its individuals from this kind of inside out approach. So it's very in-depth. The results that it come from it, I think of as more as side effects of the process. So all the returns on investment that people usually want to get, ironically, I've found they get them a lot more when it's not their top priority. So, I like working with businesses that are actually wanting to invest in their people and very holistically. And then the strategy part of that is helping to design and bring systems in for them to habitually do it, not just during the period of training, but long-term afterwards. So that's the thing I'm most interested is the long-term rather than just like a peak experience and then getting seduced by their habits afterwards.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? Everything's energy, right? So if people have just got this hustle, go, 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 we need to hit these milestones, sort of gross, overly masculine energy, then that's not going to work long term. There needs to be that beautiful balance and that flow that I'm sure that you bring into the space when you drop in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sustainable flow with that is, it's critical.
And is part of it like going into businesses and working with individuals, or is it group work?
It's both the group work and leadership teams predominantly, and then individual coaching where that comes through as well. But that's the minority. It's mostly the group work, and that's through either smaller containers such as workshops, talks, and things like that, all the way up to 16-week or 16-session courses. So quite in-depth ones.
Juicy stuff.
Yeah, if they really want to dive in deep and really change trajectories, there's that there as well.
And so, what do you find the group work really rewarding?
I love it. Yeah. It's been a massive journey for me as well. The part of the whole Shoshin being the beginner's mind is that I don't consider myself the authority in the room or the teacher. I'm a fellow student with them, and every time I go through this stuff, I learn just as well. Yeah, probably just as much actually, like from each of the person there and all of their experiences, because they all bring so much to the session as well. So
I love that. You're like a guide, you're in there to guide the flow of what's going on in there. Drop some wisdom in.
Facilitate.
Yeah, I love it. And so do you do one-on-one work as well?
I do. Yeah.
Just sort of with the business owners or the top guns of the...
Ideally, it's with business owners, leadership teams, executives, and people that are looking for it as well. And it's very much based on what their goals are. So if it's going to be, the larger courses encompass all 8 dimensions of wellness, and if they want to hone in one area, then we can really do that, but also go deep on their individual life architecture. So like you were saying with energy, understanding, I talk about it in terms of congruence, helping to really dive deep in, all right, you're clear, if they are clear on what they want and they think they know what their vision for the future is and they want to realize that vision, then what in their life is helping them along that path and what is actually not incongruent or incoherent with that kind of state, and it's actually pulling them the other direction. And so they can just bit by bit systematically make everything go in the one direction and go with the flow rather than swimming upstream.
Oh, I like that a lot. What made you come to this point, like to do this sort of work now? You haven't always been doing this sort of work. Where did you start?
So I've always had an interest in mindset and curiosity about existential level things since I was a kid. But I still was, going into the army, pretty typical, infantry soldier. What's about 2010 went in at reserves, and then 2014 went full-time infantry role, and then I consider myself a pretty regular soldier, and had my first deployment to Iraq. But this was a Taji deployment, not to be confused with the combat intensive deployments of Afghanistan. So it was a Taji 1, and that was really where I started to get a sense of how long-term habits and inconsistencies impact oneself, whether with various stressors. I was still at quite an unconscious level at the time, so I didn't really have a perception of my own patterns, both in within my psychology in the army, and my mental health and well-being, or my relationships outside of the army. So I was still perpetuating a lot of the same patterns, but looking back from now at that, I see all of these really interesting things playing out, which
the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to address that on my second deployment. But I think my real interest for spirituality, mindset, performance optimization started when I went into an intelligence role. And that was around about 2018. And that was where I got to really dive deep into, more into the human mind and how we work, and
aren't we fascinating creatures?
Yes, so interesting, so fascinating. Much more intellectually stimulating environment as well, for sure. And then I actually got to do a Vipassana 10-day meditation course around about 2019, I think it was.
What was that word, sorry?
Vipassana.
Ooh.
So it's a Buddhist meditation technique. And at the time, I only did it because, my ex at the time said, you should do this course. And I was like, okay. And I'd never done much more than a couple minutes meditation at that point. And this is about 11 hours a day for 11 days or 10 days.
Wow, full
on. No eye contact, no talking, nothing. So it's just you with yourself the whole time. So that was a very intense experience the first time. And because that was the first one I did. I've done 2 now. And that really gave me huge insights from experience. So I'd learned a lot of the psychology. I learned a lot of the theory. I'd learned a lot of what I call the map. And then this got me into the territory. This got me into the unconscious realm a little bit, but especially my own patterns and my own, how I could be such a powerful block to myself, and how I could turn my mental faculties against myself as well. So it was really eye-opening. And I learned some really powerful principles around equanimity, this principle of radical acceptance. And also just how much my own unconscious or subconscious expectations can torture me about the expectations I have in the world, and little ways I'm trying to control the outcomes, and how this creates so much stress. I didn't know just how useful that was going to be in Iraq. So the second time, I then went through a really big breakup after that. And that was what you might call the dark night of the soul for me. It was one of the most painful things I'd ever been through. And then not long after that, I was off to Iraq again. This time in a much more interesting role, in the intelligence role. Not something that I'll be able to talk about too much on here, but that was where I had a really good understanding that, okay, I knew that I got a little bit stressed out on the first one without anything happening. So for this one, having just had this big breakup, I knew I was going to need to have really proactive approach. I knew that it's not enough to just get the psychological briefs and the safety mitigations and sign the forms, do the training. It's good, but it's not the work. So I knew, and I read the book Atomic Habits, luckily beforehand. So that gave me this really good fuel of motivation to just do a bit every day. So I started getting into yoga a bit that time. I had a little bit of meditation practice, and especially just this ability, or this new realization about how important it is to constantly frame what's in my control or my influence, and what's not in my influence. And working in an intelligence role as well, where there's so much more awareness than most people in the task group around the threats and the potential threats and how things might go. And that was a 2019-2020 period. So it was a very interesting time to be there. And that became super powerful, and there was a lot of people struggling with dealing with this overthinking complex playing out again and again, get a little bit less sleep, a little bit less ability to control it the next day, and just
the body under so much stress.
So it was interesting to see the difference between myself, and it ended up being a long one, about 9 months with no ruckle. Difference in myself between myself and my first deployment, where I was feeling actually quite fresh, and I was really happy with my performance on it, despite like so much uncertainty and intensity in different ways. Noting that we got rocketed a lot, but it wasn't like a direct combat deployment. I think it's important to distinguish that for listeners, because you know, to people who haven't been in the military, so it's easy for them to think, okay, this person went to Iraq, they were in Fallujah, you know, and for those that were there, I think it's really important that I acknowledge that I wasn't. But you know, we did get rocketed, and there was threat of death and things like that, and the various, a lot of stressors, and by just continuously practicing this stuff every day, I couldn't believe how helpful it was. I even had a really good mate send me just one stoic principle that I stuck to, which was amor fati, which means love the fate. And so for me, that was really powerful as well, of just continuously choosing to embrace everything that was happening with, like, I love this. We got delayed another 2 months, 3 months before we go home. I love it. This has happened. That's gone wrong. That mission's not going to work, whatever it was. And just telling myself I loved it. I'll be better for this having happened. And that kind of self-talk and saying, wow, this stuff is really
because if you're
powerful.
in that state of mind, you can't be in the other. You can't be
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, so there's a few principles like this and a few other things, looking after myself really well holistically. Yeah, I basically started through experience, came to just discover this foundation of HPO, human performance optimization, which has been identified in other workplaces such as, you know, RAF. And I saw that for myself. So a few years later, came back to Australia and had a few people telling me about, you know, potentially running training in this stuff. And I realized I loved it. You know, the role I loved most over there was when I got to help people. You know, and I got to help the locals and got to work in those kinds of capacities. That was what really lit me up, was helping people. So I realized that was where I wanted to do within those years. Yeah, so I started to get into that training role, started to systematically try and piece together what are the problems, you know. As you probably can relate to, military has a lot of, you know, struggles with mental health, with burnout, with low motivation and drive, or a lot of extrinsic motivation, depression. There's a lot of insecurities out there driving a lot of really toxic behaviors, a lot of these kinds of things, and you know, even just basic health and fitness, just the basics I found really lacking in a lot of ways. So while I was still at the intelligence unit, I got to start to, you know, with a friend, actually, we both got to put together a bit of a program and start to run it, just from what we observed. And then when we started to look at other models, we realized we'd actually come up with something really similar to what other models are using.
Oh, that's
you
cool.
know, and again, this systematic approach of chipping away at things in a small way over time, rather than just, boom, here's your training package and now you're competent until you expire.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not how, you know, we're realizing actually these skills are,
we evolve.
Yeah, big time. These skills, they're like fitness. They go away if we don't use them. Just like my ability to be competent on a weapon, it's just going to be dependent on how much I practice and how I practice, the quality with which I practice as well. So yeah, we've got to put these principles in, and that led into, to wrap it up, working in combat training role back at the infantry unit I went back to, and then eventually soldier performance cell as well. So I got to work in that performance space, but start to bring a lot of this Eastern practices in. I was really lucky. This amazing guy at that unit who brought yoga in. Pete Burns is a legend.
I know him.
Yeah, absolute legend. And so we got to start to bring, you know, he did a crazy amount of work to bring yoga in. I was really lucky to be on his first course and get to help support that and start to bring yoga in. And again, that environment's really interesting. You know, I got to deliver the brief of yoga to the seniors in that unit, which is all of the crust, where there's obviously quite a lot of people still there of the mindset of, this is yoga pants and tight things and incense. And yeah, got to run that session of, well, actually, this is the science behind it. This is the high performing units that use it. And then just ran a really tough session to help them show, actually, this does have a lot of benefits. And a few of them at the end were like, look, I'll be the first to say, I actually wish I had this when I was younger, you know, and yeah, it was really awesome to get to help bring that in. So bringing in this holistic element through, like we said earlier, like the talking with the soldiers where they're at, with the language they understand a bit better. And it was fairly successful. There's some that loved it and took it on. There's others that were still resistant to it, of course. But that was where
those that are ready will see that and take
exactly. And it was like, we saw lives absolutely turned around from the point of suicide, and others who just started to really come home to themselves.
It just opens different parts of the body that they haven't necessarily touched on before, or they've nicely suppressed this little bit of emotion just here on the hip, and then these particular yoga moves have gone.
Yeah, and even them just to start understanding that, there could be a correlation between my emotional life and my inner world and my physical or somatic symptoms.
The opening.
So, yeah, it was really, really cool to get to be a part of some of those life journey changes. Yeah, so I believe that's still going on now in quite a few units. It's
Mhm.
slowly spread, and I get to support it here and there. Yeah, and then basically through that, I started to realize it was I had quite a few injuries, and it was time I started and did my own thing, and realized that I wanted to do it in the business world, because I feel like the business world is where the biggest impact lies. Where
Yeah.
that's if we can work with these really highly impactful organizations and people in positions of power as well, then that's going to have the best collective impact on the collective as well. So yeah, it's been basically a long journey since, of just continuously a combination of what is the science supporting, what do I find actually works for me experientially, and what has also been supported by thousands and thousands of years of Eastern wisdom in practices where they've also just done it because it worked, and just navigating through all of that to find the common ground where it's effective.
I love that you refer to it there as the common ground. And I feel like, I'd love to broach this with you. My philosophy lately is, if we all individually start to work on ourselves and do the inner work ourselves, then us as a collective can come together and stuff will change, right? So
Yep.
I feel, going into these businesses where it's this gross, stuck corporate energy, but you're shining a light in and giving these people these tools to be able to do that inner work, or at least glance at it to go, oh yeah, maybe I could do this, or creating this curiosity is going to create such a significant shift within companies, and sort of pinpoint on what I'm alluding to here. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100% agree. It's that's what's that old saying? If you want to change the world, change yourself. It's so true. But also I see that as look at society, look at the structures we're living within. It's all just a one big, I suppose the word manifestation of everyone's mind from the past to now, about how we built and shaped things and designed things. And sometimes get the group to look around the room and realize that all the objects in the room, other than maybe the plants, were just an idea
Mm.
at some point. And the quality of that design, the shape of it, the look of it, the feel of it, all of it, that's all just been the realization of someone's vision. And so from this point forward, that's still very much the case. And so by working with people, especially that inside out approach, is the hardest way, but I found the most effective way.
The great unraveling.
Yeah.
So your journey personally, when can you pinpoint like a pivotal, was that what week-long meditation course for you?
The 10-day one. No, I think it was the breakup, actually. And it's funny because with all the interesting work in the military and all that kind of stuff, and I'm very grateful for what I learned through those experiences and those challenges. Nothing was more terrifying and more challenging to me based on where I was at the time, because of my own childhood traumas that showed themselves in my relationships. That breakup really showed me myself a lot, and I had a pattern going into victim mode, but through my relationships, and then this is the first one I started to realize, okay, maybe there's some stuff I got to take accountability for here,
Oh,
about
that
why
word,
I'm
accountability.
why am I attracting these situations again and again in my life. And that moment of opening to that possibility was the opening of whole new timelines, where now I look back at that incredibly painful experience with no resentment, no pain, just pure love and gratitude for it. And a lot of gratitude for it. So when I see friends and people going through similar experiences, I have part of me that's a little bit excited for them, because I know this could be the what's that saying, the whisper, the brick, or the train. Some people, I know, I needed the train that will give them what they need, so they can actually find out, yes, we can be really stubborn. I definitely could be really stubborn, and I needed that. So
I
that was
love
that
that you
point.
just spoke into that. And I do little celebrations too when people are going through this sort of stuff. As painful as it is to watch, I sometimes say to people like, "Oh, you're having an upgrade," and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yes, you're having an
Too
upgrade.
soon. Yeah. It's like hard to see at the time, but looking back, it's always exactly what we need. Yeah, so that was probably the thing. And then I've got to be really thankful for just to live in an age where I can access so much like amazing information. I think about our grandparents. Looking into trauma can be an interesting wormhole, or can of worms, because people can be like, oh, well, why did my parents raise me in that way, and that kind of thing. But you look at their parents; they were in World War II, worldwide level PTSD, with no way of talking about it, no way to deal with it. Highly suppressed emotions, just passing their patterns on, and then they did it pretty damn well with what they had.
Oh,
Generation
absolutely.
before us, that much less awareness, totally different set of challenges, and we're now, and again, the kids after us will probably look back and be like, what were they thinking?
Mm.
And we're still in that, but I feel so lucky that I've never had my own teacher or mentor, like in that sense of a guru or something like that, but I've had access to many because of being able to read and learn many different lineages and just been
I love
learning
your
from a lot of
curious
people.
mind. Can I just say that? I love it. And it's great that you haven't had just one, because I feel like sometimes people go to this like, that's my person, that's my mentor. And then as they're evolving, they're not realizing that they're actually shifting away from that now. And they've actually received what they needed to from that teaching, deity, whatever it is, and shifting on. So
Yeah,
yeah, follow the
absolutely.
path, not the person.
Yeah, and that's a big one. I think in whether it's religions, whether it's scientific endeavors, whether it's any form of mental model or thought, like there's gold in all of it. Like there is something, and that's the Shoshin principle really helps one to find that. To really be open-minded enough and rock up as a student, especially where someone is already an expert, and be like, what am I actually? What's new here that I'm not potentially seeing, which is really uncomfortable for the ego.
Oh, yes. People rewind that bit. That's gold right there, what you said. Because some people will go into a room already assuming, and this happens so much in the military, I already know this shit. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
do
oh,
you? What could you
yeah.
learn here today?
Yeah, absolutely. They all say you never step in the same river twice. There's a lot of people thinking that I've been here before. And it's like, actually, I call that leadership of the present moment. Who's the one in the room who can really see this moment for what it is? The incredible amount of opportunities and all of that depends on basic curiosity. And the curiosity is like the pie graph of like opening away from closed-mindedness. It's impossible to have both.
Yeah.
But it's just one of the best things. It was such a funny way that I even found the principle, actually. Little story. I've always loved handstands. I was always doing handstands, always upside down. And I've done them for like most of my life. So I consider myself pretty good at handstands. Although if you asked my friends who are gymnasts, they would want to vomit. And I went to this place in Cairns and I was traveling around in my van and it's called Shoshin. I was like, what's Shoshin? Same as everyone asks me now, how do I say that? What is that?
Yeah.
And it meant beginner's mind, and they had this cool thing on the wall there about the beginner's mind and it was all the different factors of it. And I was like, wow, this sounds really awesome. Cool. Anyway, I'll go in the advanced class. And then I was like, maybe I should try this. And that year I'd tried a few key things that were life changing. I was like, oh, this can be really powerful if I just try something. So, all right, let's go in the beginner's class. I went to the beginner's class and I was like, they're doing their warm ups and their little activation exercises and different progressions. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know how to do that. Didn't know how to do that. I've been doing that wrong. Been doing that wrong. And I was like, oh, I've just been having training scars, imprinting bad habits and programs for 10 years. That's why my handstands still suck. So I was like, oh, within 2 weeks, my handstands went from this to this. I was able to maintain a static one. And I use it now to rapidly learn things.
Yeah.
Guitar, flow arts, language, all these different things. It's
Fire twirling.
fire twirling. The flow or burn. Yeah, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. And so this was in Cairns, did you say?
Yeah, so I was in Cairns, a place called Shoshin. Really
Oh,
good.
cool.
I'm not getting a commission for it, but if anyone goes there, it's great.
But I love that. That was your sign, and you saw
Yeah.
it and you ran with it. I feel like we're offered signs every single day, and the more we're in alignment or in congruence, as you put it, you open yourself up to see these things more often, and it's so beautiful. I love seeing it now. I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
What's
absolutely.
next?
Yeah, and I think it's often the biases and the numbness that really make it hard to see those things. That the body talks in whispers and a lot of those things, and it's really difficult to be sensitive enough to feel and see these things in the normal world where there's so much overstimulation. And that's a
Oh,
big
true.
thing I work with, working through the iceberg kind of principle of the conscious mind and unconscious mind, but also the gross and subtle elements of it. And this is what I learned a lot of my second Vipassana, was just how many subtle layers of being there are, that I started to just scratch the surface of a few of them. And I was like, holy crap, I get it now. Like I need to maintain a certain degree of sensitivity, not in the Western sense of the word of being reactive, but in terms of being highly calibrated to be able to feel
I like
what's
that.
actually going on. Yeah. And that's the other thing, a lot of words in this realm don't mean the same thing to people. We can use the word vibration and it can give this immediate hippie kind of bias to someone, or we talk about it from a sense of resonance or whatever it might be. It's, again, different story. Or if I talk about sensitivity, so it's a lot of my work is making sure we mean the same word so it
Yeah.
actually lands, making sure the energy of the transmission goes through.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So important when you're working with these sorts of corporate types as well. I feel like they're very masculine energy driven, like go, 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 do, process, process, system. So to get them into a space where their stuff is going to land in that feminine and they're going to be able to process and integrate that, that's a gift, my friend.
Yeah, oh, thank you. It's something I'm definitely working on still, and it's interesting about the masculine. I had a really great exposure to both. I think in the military, especially in the operations environment. And it kind of has to be that way. A lot of control mechanisms, a lot of what you might call yang. And it's great. It's been a great journey for me to learn more about the definitions and feelings of various yang and yin aspects of life, and realizing it's so hyper, out of balance on that end. There's so much system, there's so much organization. There's no room for a lot of people to be fully expressed. And that has its challenges for sure. It also has amazing aspects of it. It's just a matter of perspective, and I think these things are just neutral. They serve a purpose. And then the other end, I got to spend 7 months driving around in my van and being really free spirited and adventuring, getting out in nature. Yeah, full yin. But I was also got to be around a lot of extreme anti-yin people who were in their chaos and beautifully free spirited and expressive, and they do whatever they want. But on that end, it's equally toxic and equally imprisoning.
There's no bowl to hold the water.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just everywhere.
It's probably the perfect analogy for it. And yeah, they struggle with the directions, where I'm going now, impulsives, addictions, a lot of these things. So realizing over the years, wow, it's really a matter of both. There's that balance point, and corporate world needs it desperately. Yeah.
And finding the space and time to choose them, to bring that yin and that balance in. I know they get busy. Everyone like, oh, how have you been? Busy. I hear that so often. It's like, well, why don't you just quit busy and find out how else that could look? And I think this that you're offering people is shining a light on that and giving them some ways to approach it in a different manner.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, very different. It's exciting stuff that we're in a place that even the army will take on something like yoga in some capacities. And we've got corporate world being open to these kinds of systems now. Again, generally it's when they realize there's some money to be made in it. A lot of greenwashing out there. But it's all heading in the right
abundance
direction.
in any way, right? They just see money's just their thing at the moment. They'll see it in different ways eventually. And I love that. So if the listeners were wanting to find out more about your work, you as a person or anything like that, all of your social media stuff will be in anywhere that we place this recording. But do you have any final wisdom for people that are really curious and they're perhaps not at the point you were, before your breakup, that say that's happening, say they're in their dark night of the soul? What have you got for them?
I think it would be actually one of my really recent learnings around realizing what are the qualities of my internal world and outer world, and how do I get them into alignment. So this principle of realizing that if I have a goal, because a lot of people in that kind of space are very goal orientated, but realizing the holistic nature of achieving a goal. So if someone wants something, maybe it's health, maybe it's to feel better or more vibrancy, looking at every element of their life. Does it resonate with health? And I've been learning recently through like Ayurveda, Indian health food system, like they go to the point of like the intention, and there's a lot of science to support how intentions affect things now. It's very interesting. But around, all right, what is the intention this food's getting made with? By who? Is by someone that has the music I'm consuming, the people the words I'm repeating to myself. What are the quality of these words? Do they represent the values of what I want, or are they actually going in the opposite direction? And this is why I think people struggle so much with going where they want to go, is their whole life is going the opposite direction. Their self-talk, their embodied values, not their thought values, but their actual values. The trauma that's not been processed. So that looking back around, all right, how do I get this all to vibrate at the same level? Which was tricky. It means peeling back a lot of stuff. Might mean saying goodbye to certain people. Yeah, or you just dive in. Yeah,
get in there. Crack the door right off its hinges and step in.
Yeah, it came through for me. It's been a big one for me recently, to just keep tuning in, like, oh, okay, like, there are parts of my life that actually aren't congruent with what I'm saying I want and the vision I'm going forward. And it's been a continuous journey. So it's been awesome.
Beautiful awareness there. And thank you for sharing. Because I think, if we're not honoring that for ourselves, then we're not growing. Awareness is the key.
Yeah. That would probably be the tip. But I remember when I heard that I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah.
Like,
Until you were in it.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. You have shared with us so much wisdom, and I would actually like to do some work with you in the future. So I'm sure that we'll have you
Awesome. Me
back
too.
on the podcast, Stefan. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing as well. I think it's really amazing that you're also harboring those two sides and walking the middle path of that. So yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.